Bernie Sanders is here. He was an independent senator from Vermont with low name recognition when he announced his candidacy for the presidency of the United States. That was in May 2015. He had very little money, no political organization, and he took on as his chief competitor Hillary Clinton in the Democratic primary. Sanders went on to receive more than 13 million votes in primaries and caucuses across the country, winning 22 states. His campaign struck a powerful chord with many young voters and is credited with inspiring a new generation of political activism. With Donald Trump's stunning win over Hillary Clinton in last week's election, the Democratic Party's future has been called into question. Sanders' new book chronicles his experience on the campaign trail and outlines his vision for this country's future. I am pleased to have him back at this table. Welcome.
Very nice to be with you, John.
Now, when did you write this? Did you keep a diary? Did you what?
I wrote it over a 3-month frantic period, working, 12 hours, 13 hours every day. So I started it after the Democratic convention and just worked very hard for 3 months.
And it is, in fact, what?
It's a couple of things. The first half of the book talks about just the issues that you raised. It talks about the campaign, starting off taking on the entire political establishment, the Democratic establishment, the Clinton organization, the media, which did not take us seriously, also Wall Street and all these corporate America. And it talks about being on the campaign trail, the kind of support that we developed, the kinds of coalitions that we put together, and the fact that, especially among young people and working people, we struck a real nerve. The fact is that in virtually every primary and caucus that we engaged in, we won the very strong support, overwhelming support of young people under 40 years of age, which tells me that the ideas that we brought forth are the ideas for the future of America. So that's one part of the book. It talks about why. What does it mean to be talking to working families and the middle class and low-income people and young people? How do we get them involved? And the second half of the book does something that I think we need to do a whole lot about, and that is to answer some very fundamental questions that we don't talk about. Charlie, put it right on the table. For the last 40 years, the middle class of this country has been in decline. And we have seen during that period a massive shift of wealth and income from the middle class to the top 1/10 of 1%. How often do we discuss that issue? Why are we the only major country on earth not to provide health care to all people as a right, and yet we spend more per capita than any other people? Why are we the only major country not to have paid family and medical leave? What are we going to do about the planetary crisis of climate change, criminal justice reform, immigration reform? So what the second half of the book is really, it says these are the crises that we face. In my view, this is how we go forward. This is a blueprint for an America which works for all of us, not just the few. A blueprint for an America in which we lead the world in transforming our energy system, in which we come together and not allow ourselves to be divided up. So it's two parts. It's the campaign trail, and it is a prescription for how we go forward.
For the second part, you talked about during the campaign. Those are the issues you talked about.
Yes, that's right.
You met with Secretary Clinton before the Democratic convention. You essentially believed that she believed in what you did, for the most part.
Well, what happened after the primary was over and she won, we sat down together, and essentially what we said is, okay, how can we work together? I had proposed throughout the campaign making public colleges and universities tuition free. She had a different approach, but it was a strong approach. She ended up coming together with me and saying, all right, we'll make public colleges and universities tuition free for all families under $125,000 a year. That's 83% of the population. That's a pretty big deal. She also came in agreement with me on a major program to expand community health centers so we can have almost universal primary care. I'm a believer in a Medicare for all single-payer program. That's not her view, but we did get a major expansion in community health centers. And I thought on issue after issue she was far, far superior to Mr. Trump. I campaigned as hard as I could for her.
And you wouldn't have done that if you didn't think that she was essentially close to where you were in your...
I would say, we can argue the nuance here, certainly on every issue. She, very importantly, understands that big money and Citizens United is destroying our political system. She was in favor of overturning Citizens United, so am I, in enormously important issues. She certainly understands the seriousness of global warming, unlike Mr. Trump. So on many, many issues, her positions were strong. and I was happy to campaign for her.
And was she in the end with you in terms of Wall Street?
Well, you have to ask her. I mean, you know, she
You
has.
say that means no.
No, it doesn't. It means that you never will know. You know, and certainly one of the interesting moments right now is, you know, Mr. Trump, amazingly enough, during the last week of the campaign, he said, I am going to be a strong defender of the working class. Now, how often do you hear that term used? You don't hear most Democrats coming on here saying, we're going to defend the working. Am I right on that?
No, you're right.
All right, there's Mr. Trump. So
So
you know,
you think what?
Well, I mean,
he
so
recognized at some point in the waning moments of the campaign that this was a call that he had to make and try to reach out so that people identified him?
He used language that many Democrats don't. And so what we are going to do, and what my job as a United States Senator is in the next many, many months or years, is to say, you talked about the problems facing the working class, all right? You talked about how people are working longer hours for low wages. Okay, here is our ideas. We want to raise the minimum wage to a living wage. Mr. Trump, are you with us? We want to create millions of jobs by rebuilding our crumbling infrastructure. Are you with us? Now, I know it's easy for Mr. Trump and some, not all of his friends, to beat up on Muslims and Mexicans. That's easy to beat up on somebody who makes $8 an hour, has no power, or a little girl wearing a kerchief who's a Muslim. Very easy to beat up on the powerless. Do you have the guts to take on Wall Street and the drug companies who are ripping us off? Take on corporate America, where major corporations don't pay a nickel in federal taxes in a given year? That's your challenge.
But so let's ask ourselves, you were surprised that he won?
I thought it was about 2-1 that Hillary would win.
2-1.
Yeah. So I wasn't shocked,
Yeah.
surprised.
Why did he win?
I'll tell you why he won. Because what the media doesn't understand, what the establishment doesn't understand, is there are tens of millions of people who are not racists, who are not sexist. They're hurting. Charlie, you make $30,000 or $40,000 a year. You're a single dad. How do you afford $12,000, $15,000 a year for childcare? How do you do that? It's 1/3 of your income. You are 60 years of age.
Before you get to housing, before
Exactly.
you get to food, before
Right,
you get
taxes
to medical
and
care
everything else.
everything
Exactly. Right. Just one simple thing, childcare. You are 60 years of age. You're going to be retiring in a few years.
If you have a job.
You're not going to have a job. If you are 50% of older American workers, do you know how much money you have in the bank for retirement, Charlie?
0.
What are you thinking? You're scared to death. And you're getting sick, you go to the doctor, you got an illness. How do you pay for that? If you are middle-aged right now, you got a couple of kids, and you have health insurance, but you have very high deductibles and co-payments, and you can't afford prescription drugs, you are scared to death. That is a reality that the establishment, PBS, NBC, ABC, CBS, that's ignored. That is ignored. But that is what millions of people are experiencing every day. They are hurting. You're a worker. You've worked in a factory with pride.
But the question is, why did they vote for Donald Trump rather than Hillary Clinton?
Because he spoke with passion to those issues. He used the word, I will defend the working class. I am anti-establishment. I'm going to take them on.
I'm against Washington. I'm against
I'm
lobbyists.
against everything. Now, the question is, I happen to think he's a very good entertainer. I never believed him for a moment. Now, I hope very much that he proves me wrong. And this is a strange guy. He is nobody's fool. That we can recognize. Will he, in fact, looking at America, understands that some of the horrific things that he said during the campaign and things that he has done in his life, like leading the birther movement to delegitimize our first African-American president, was a horrible thing to do? Will he recognize that you can't disrupt the lives of millions of people, say we're going to throw people out of this country who've been here for years working? Will he stop this anti-Muslim rhetoric?
You think that he did the birther thing at that time before he said, no, it's not true. I believe that he is, as an American citizen and has a birth certificate. You think he did it for political reasons, period? That he knew better?
I am not his psychoanalyst. I don't know. But clearly it was a racist, nothing less than a very racist effort, which got him a lot of attention among certain types of people. At best, it was just simply a gimmick for him to gain some recognition among extreme right-wing people.
You know what surprises me? You have not talked to Hillary Clinton since his defeat.
It just
Don't tell me that. That's just silly. You know better than that. It's just. It takes 5 minutes to talk to her.
Well,
for her to call you.
Yeah,
for you to call her.
We will. I suspect before the day is over.
No, but before this day is over.
Yeah,
That says something to me, though.
Well, I mean, Hillary Clinton and I are not.
You're not intimate. I understand that.
It's, Charlie, what is, I think, a little bit more important is that in the last week of this campaign, I was in 12 states giving 21 rallies, speaking to 20,000 people on behalf of
the election.
Before the election.
Right.
So I think I played my role. I felt that it was important that Hillary Clinton be elected, and that's what I did. But I want to get back to, you asked me a question. Why did Trump win? And it has nothing to do with my relationship with Hillary Clinton. Trump won because millions of people are hurting, and very few folks are talking to their pain, and there's an enormous amount of pain in this country.
There's this saying that's going around, as you know, that for the elites, the establishment, and you're an elite. You're a member of the United States Senate. No, stop it. You're a member of the United States Senate. The most exclusive club.
Charlie, wait a minute.
Yes,
wait a minute.
okay,
of course I'm a United States Senator. If you want to say anybody in the Senate, I've spent my entire life fighting for working people, and I come from the working class.
But you have special privilege as a human being because you're a member of this most exclusive club. You're in Washington. You're recognized.
Well, I don't accept
that you're an elite.
I accept that I'm a United States Senator.
At the same time, be one that is responsive and recognizes
your point.
Okay, go ahead. My point is, I guess my point is a sense that when he used his own rhetoric to appeal to them, and in terms of her own analysis of the election, she says that they were on a roll, that they were marching to victory, and they were suddenly stopped by the Comey announcement that he was reopening the investigation.
Well, I think the Comey investigation was totally inappropriate. I think it hurt Hillary.
And you said so at the time.
And it could have made the difference, the margin of difference. I think she may well be right.
Could have made the margin of difference?
Yes, it could have. Of course it could have. And let's not forget, she got more votes than Mr. Trump. And in several states, she lost by a hair, just a few votes. So it could have made the margin. I'm not saying she was wrong. But there's a deeper question. All right. The deeper question is, you can always go back and think about this tactic or this event that happened. The deeper question is, how do we lose? And I broaden the Democratic Party to a candidate who proposes to give huge tax breaks to the wealthiest people in this country, who proposes to throw
tax breaks to corporations,
proposes to throw 20 million Americans off of health insurance, who does not believe in the reality of climate change, and who has attacked. His record on women is beyond, it's almost unspeakable. Attacking African Americans and Latinos and Muslims. How do we lose a race like that? And that goes a lot deeper than what the FBI did. A lot deeper than that. And that speaks to where the Democratic Party is today, how it sees itself. What is the Democratic Party? What concerns me very much, we had a lot of Democrats who spend much of their life, you know what they do much of their life? They're out raising money from wealthy people. Now, in this day and age, as a result of Citizens United, money is very important. I know it. But you can't just spend your entire life raising money for the wealthy people. What Trump was doing, to his credit, he was going out holding rallies. He was going all over this country. He was going in rural areas where candidates previously did not go. In many ways, I did that myself.
Like Wisconsin?
Yeah, like Wisconsin. I'm not quite sure how you run a campaign for president and not go to Wisconsin or to Maine, okay? But he was out there rallying people. That's what a serious candidate has got to do. That's what Democrats, how many Democrats?
And that's what she didn't do because she was on the phone raising money.
Well, it's not.
That's the point you're raising.
Well, she was not on the phone. She was at hundreds and hundreds of fundraisers. But it's not just her. I mean, if I were to tell you, gee, here is a press release, Senator so forth and so on, leading Democrat, is going to Mississippi to speak to the working people in one of the poorest states in this country, you'd say, whoa, never saw that before in my life, have you? Can you think of any? I know that because I went to Mississippi and people said, gee, we never saw a non-Republican coming to Mississippi to talk to white and black workers. What a shock that would be for the Democrats to have a 50-state strategy where they went to Wyoming and they went to Kansas and they talked to people other than going for fundraisers. We need a revolution within the Democratic Party. We need to transform it. We need to make it a working class party, a grassroots party.
You wrote an op-ed in the New York Times that essentially makes this point.
Yeah.
You need a revolution because it's the policy proposals coming from you, from her, from other Democrats are one thing. It seems to me you are saying you've got to show people who are hurting, for all the reasons you've laid out on this table, that you hear them, that you're listening, that you recognize that they are up against insurmountable odds.
Yes. Right. That's right. Let's put it out on the table. And here's the reality. Are we better off today than we were 8 years ago before Obama became president? The answer is you got to be a partisan not to recognize that we were. 8 years ago, you remember, massive unemployment, world's financial system on the verge of collapse. Yes, we're better off. But there is another reality, and you just touched on it. And media has no clue about it, no clue about it at all. And that is people are working 2 or 3 jobs. People are scared to death, not only about what happens to them when they retire, they're worried about their kids. You got college graduates who are waiting tables, all right, driving cabs. They're saying, hey, I went to school, I'm $50,000 in debt. Is that all that this country could offer?
But I think that there is this reality, too, that when people were talking about mounting a campaign, I remember when before Secretary Clinton announced, I mean, everybody has understood in their head, you know, that we have a real problem here with what's happening to the middle class. That was not a new idea. That idea was there. I think the difference was, I'm asking to, not rather than saying, the point I'd raised earlier, they simply weren't communicating that. That they understood it. They understood it intellectually,
Charlie, there's understanding and understanding.
Well, that's my point.
All right, here, I can write a speech saying, we're going to fight for everyday Americans. Right. Does that mean that I really...
Because you know that's where the votes are, too.
Yeah, of course, that's rhetoric. But what does that mean? For example, all right, the American people are asking themselves, and I say this in New York City where we're recording this, how does it happen that every major financial institution in this country has paid billions of dollars in fines for illegal activity? No CEO has been prosecuted. People are saying, this is a corrupt system, man. How does it happen that billionaires are able to buy elections and spend hundreds of millions of dollars?
Well, before you say that, let me just ask this question. I mean, you just said we have 8 years of a Democratic administration.
That's right.
A Democrat was appointed to be the leader of the Justice Department.
Yep. Well, you can answer the question as well as I can. That's the point. So I think what people say is we are better off today under Obama than we certainly were at the end of Bush's campaign. Thank you, President Obama, for doing a lot of good things. But I think there is still a whole lot of things where this Obama administration has not been as strong as it should be. And you have Mr. Trump coming along and saying, hey, you are hurting, your factories are going abroad.
Will a President Trump be able to dismantle President Obama's legacy?
I'm not worried about the legacy. I am worried about the reality in terms of how it impacts millions of people. Now, what Trump has said, and in fairness to him, this is not an original idea with him. This is what Republicans believe. Look, the Republican Party is largely funded by the Koch brothers and a few other billionaires. Do you know what the Koch brothers believe? You should have them up here sometime. I don't know if you ever have. Ask them their views.
They believe in reforming criminal justice.
Yeah, well, I'll tell you what else they believe in.
Yes.
All right. They don't want to cut Social Security and Medicare and Medicaid, not the Koch brothers. They want to eliminate those programs. They want to eliminate public education in America. This is an extreme right-wing group that spends hundreds of millions of dollars to elect Republicans. And they now have an enormous influence over the Republican
But they weren't
Party.
supportive of Donald Trump.
Oh, I think they will be just fine with Mr. Trump. You're right. They put most of their money into Senate and House races.
Right.
But they'll be very happy with what Mr. Trump does.
But here is also this idea that has gotten some prominence, that the elites, they took him literally but not seriously. And the people who supported him took him seriously but not literally, meaning they gave him a pass on some of these things he said to be disruptive because they believed in the end he really would change.
This is what I know, and who knows? You know, Mr. Trump, and we have to say this, ran the most unconventional campaign in the modern history of America. We know that he's a very smart guy. We know that he has done some very ugly things in the past in terms of race and this birther movement. Terrible things said about Mexican Americans, record on women, and beyond belief, really terrible. What he does as a president, we will have to wait and see. On the other hand, he has raised some issues about the decline of the middle class, about Wall Street, about the pharmaceutical industry. So all I can say, Charlie, I'm not here to predict what Mr. Trump will do, although he makes me obviously very, very nervous. So the way I look at it is, if he is going to go forward, and this appointment of Mr. Bannon is a very bad sign, If he is going to go forward and thinks he's going to throw millions of Latinos out of this country, if he thinks he's going to be a racist, if he thinks he's going to be a sexist, we in the progressive movement are going to fight him tooth and nail.
Can you stop him?
I think we can.
On those issues that you talk about.
I think we can. You know what?
The deportation of several million immigrants who he says are those immigrants who have a criminal record.
Yeah, I don't know what that means. I mean, what is that? They jaywalked. They got fined for speeding on on the interstate. I don't know what that means, but I think yes. I think you're going to find. Look, and this I believe so passionately. I don't have to tell you. You know it as well as I do that this country, for hundreds of years, there have been people who are fighting against how we treated Native Americans, how we treated African Americans, how we treated women, how we treated Asian Americans, the Asian Exclusion Act. How we discriminated against Italians and the Irish and the Jews and everybody else. We have been fighting over and over and over again to reach what Martin Luther King Jr. reminded us, that we should judge people based on their character, not by the color of their skin or where they came from. That's the vision that we have. And there are millions of people, not just minorities, but whites as well, who say, we are not going back. Mr. Trump, you and your friends are not going to divide this country up. Now, I hope, because I think he's a smart guy. He's a strange man, but he's a very smart man. I hope that he understands that if he tries to divide us up by race or country of origin, there will be a massive backlash. Second of all, which concerns me very much, media didn't talk about it much during the campaign. Trump campaigned by saying that he thought climate change was a hoax. I'm a member of the Environmental Committee. Let me tell you what I'm sure you already know. Climate change is no hoax. It is a great threat to this planet. We have to transform our energy system and move away from fossil fuel. That speaks to the future, not only of this country, the whole world. Here's what I worry about, Charlie. If the rest of the world, Russia, India, China, Germany, they see that the United States has given up, doesn't even believe the reality of climate change, they're going to say, why the hell are we transforming our energy system? And then we're going to have a planet. I got 7 grandchildren. And if that happens, I worry very much. So I hope that Mr. Trump has the brains to listen to the scientific community and not his right-wing.
Do you have any indication, based on what he has said, the interview he did with Leslie Stahl, who's coming up on this program, there may be an indication that he is thinking seriously that somehow the awesome power at the White House has a sobering effect?
Let's hope. I mean, let me say it again. I think that Donald Trump, in his own way, is certainly an unusual type of politician. I think he's a smart guy. And in many ways, you have to say that he ran a brilliant campaign. He won. No one thought that he could win.
And you agree with those who say we owe it to him to give him a chance to see what he can do?
I'm not going to give him a chance regarding racism or bigotry or sexism. I'm not going to give him any chance at all. But I will give him. The question is not to whether you allow him to do what. The chance is you wait and see what he's going to do, and if he, in fact, it realizes your worst fears, then. I mean, there will be. I don't think the majority of the. Let's be clear. We have racist and sexist in this country. Everybody knows that. I think they're a minority. And I think there are a lot of people who voted for Trump who really dislike a lot of what he said, but felt that maybe he could do something to improve their economic condition.
Because nobody had done anything before.
Because they're hurting.
And they're hurting.
They're hurting. Yeah.
How split is the Democratic Party? You're talking about the revolution. You wrote about the notion of the Democratic Party has got to change.
Yeah, and I wrote about it in the book, and I speak about it every day.
How split?
Well, I wouldn't use the word it is split, but let's look at it in another way. Today, the Republican Party will soon control the White House, control the Senate, control the House. They control, 2/3 of the state houses in this country. Last 8 years, Democratic Party has lost some 800 or 900 seats in state legislatures around the country.
And that's why?
All right. So any objective analysis says whatever the hell the Democrats are doing ain't working very well, right? That we can agree on. All right. That's number one. Number two, why? Well, I think it speaks that, and I don't mean this in a condemnatory way, although it'll sound that way, the Democratic Party has become a party of the liberal elite. People who, as I am, are going to fight for women's rights, fight for gay rights, fight for minority rights. I believe all that. I've probably 100% voting record on all of those issues. But when you're sitting at a cocktail party raising money from people who are going to contribute $30,000 a piece to your PAC, are those people staying up nights worrying about that worker in Wisconsin or Michigan who saw his job go to China? No. So I think what you need to do is change the focus and say to those wealthy people, hey, we need your help. But you know what? You are the minority. You're the 1%, you're the 2%. We got to start reaching out to the 98, 99%, many of whom are really hurting. And that's what the book is about.
That's what the book is about. The book is Our Revolution, Bernie Sanders. His campaign was called A Future to Believe in. Thank you for coming.
Thank you very much.
Back in a moment. Stay with us.